Welcome back to another episode of the FuelHer Energy Podcast, where we share the untold yet inspiring stories of women in energy and business. Of course, I am your host, Jamisia McCalman. If you're now discovering your girl for the first time, welcome to my little side of the world. Do feel free to follow me everywhere at jamisiamccalman.gy or Jamisia McCalman. Of course, it takes a village, it takes a community to get this entire production going. So we want to say thank you to our sponsors, our community partner, ExxonMobil Guyana, Ansa McCall Limited, and the Always brand, as well as Always Foam. Thank you to Praetorian community. They have always been so supportive of all of the projects that I've been doing over the last few years. And so thank you to Dallas and the team there at Praetorian. Thank you to Morgan's Investment Inc., Axis Investment and Consultancy Global Healthcare Supplies. And of course, my sister, my friend, Ari and Dahlia Richmond from Dahlia L'artista. Today, I am excited to introduce our next female trailblazer who will be joining me on this episode. She's someone that I've admired from a distance. It is only recently that we had our first interaction, and I was like, you have to be one of my guests on this first season of the FuelHer Energy Podcast. She is an award-winning educator with over 25 years in the education sector. She is the founder and academics lead at Camille's Academy. She is none other than Dr. Camille Deokie-Gorakh.
I am an industrial hygienist at ExxonMobil Guyana. I focus on employee health and well-being and develop programs that protect my colleagues. I am one of 1,400 women employed in Guyana's oil and gas industry.
As a local content analyst at ExxonMobil Guyana, I work directly with the local business community. I focus on the numbers, helping Guyana's economy and people benefit from oil and gas. This is what's possible.
Learn more about Rochelle and Ashley's stories and about ExxonMobil's commitment to empowering women in the workplace at www.exxonmobil.com/what is possible.
Dr. Camille, we're finally here.
Yes,
on the FuelHer Energy Podcast.
Yes.
How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Thank you for asking.
It's a pleasure having you. You know, as I said, I've seen you around. I think my first distant interaction with you, because it was virtually, was part of the speakers regional debating competition last year.
Correct.
And that's where I was introduced to you. But then we met recently, and that first in-person interaction, I was like, as I said, yes, I got to know more about you. I have to know more about you, and I think Guyana deserves to know more about you, aside from just the fact that you are an educator. But let's talk about that. 25 years as an educator. Was teaching always your passion?
All right, so first and foremost, thank you so much for having me. And I love the energy. When we first met, I must say that, and I took you up on that offer immediately.
Thank you.
Yes, as women, as we evolve and we work so hard to reach this space, it's important that our stories are out there.
Absolutely.
With the hope that it can motivate other young women. Now, first and foremost, 25 years as an established business, but in 2026 will be 30 years in the education field.
That deserves a round of applause.
30 years I will be celebrating.
Congratulations.
Where it all started, and has it always been my passion? What an interesting question. When I was going to high school, I had a passion for principle of accounts, principle of business, and I gave it my all. Because at that time, the funny story is I used to visit the bank with my parents, and I would watch these young women. And, I told myself one day I'm going to be working in the bank. I'm going to be working behind that teller. Because what inspired me, as silly as it may sound, looking at them dressing all eloquent.
You're not the only one. It's not silly. You're not the only one.
They were the purse, the high heel shoes. And in my mind, I'm thinking that is where I see myself one day. But giving my best to subjects that I knew was going to connect me to that career, I give it my all. When I graduated high school, I made sure I got distinction in principles of business and principle of accounts. not realizing that probably there was a higher being and he took control. So there was a different path for me. When I finished high school, some of my neighbors, they wanted me to assist their children. My parents got excited and made a huge announcement. I did well at CXC. So obviously the parents at that time, there was so much help needed within the public school. So I took about a dozen of the neighbors' children, and I started to help them in the afternoons into the evenings. As funny as it sounded, I tutored those neighbor children in my father's garage. Within a year or two, and just at the tender age of 16, within a year or two, the appreciation grew bigger. And the community, as you talk about community, the community, showed their appreciation. And at that time, they thought that you've got a really good skill. Why not make this thing bigger? Rather than 1,000 children, I see you, working with kids in the evening, after school program, and we're going to give you our support. That time I tried a thing. Mm-hmm. The first set of marketing I did was a basic flyer and brochure. We registered 65 children. And that was in 1996. First month in October, if I can remember. Yes, first month in October.
Yet? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that was 1996, 3 months out of high school. I've always had a passion for learning, for education. One thing led to the other. And today, almost 30 years, that 65 children grew into 4 campuses. About 1,800 children currently, but thousands of children I would have had the honor of making an impact in their life in some way or the other.
Wow.
So that is basically how the story would have evolved.
One of the things that you highlighted there is family. Yes. And how they would have supported you, how your dad would have supported you. Tell us a little bit more about how integral their support really would have been in where you're at today.
Yes, that is something I would often advocate for when I go to my PTA meetings, and I would use my own experience of how we didn't have much growing up in a very small community that is in Susdak on the east bank of Demerara. But I would often demonstrate to the parents, and I always use it as a story to let them know that there's so much we can do when it comes to parents and how important parental involvement is into education or the mere upbringing of a child or your children. My parents have always been, they're like my earthly gods. I would always say that. And they have always been there, and education was a big thing for them when it comes to their children. The right to have access to a good education was it for them. That doesn't mean that the children have to be doctors and lawyers and engineers. Apart from education is discipline. Yeah. I came from a very, very disciplined home. And I would often tell my story because I wanted to make an impact. My dad was so strict that sometimes, as you were growing up, you often question, why is he so strict? Sometimes you feel frustrated and you're overwhelmed at that time. But I would use my story now to tell the younger generation that if I didn't have a strict parent or a humble upbringing or come from a strict home, you might not have known what you would have become today. And it's all because of that discipline, my growth, and how I would have evolved over the years. I would often give credit to the disciplined home, the family support, and always have that parental involvement in my life.
I love that, but it also makes me think about the children. Even as we're talking about being an educator, we're thinking about children who do not have parental support, whether their parents aren't alive or their parents do not even have the emotional intelligence or the intellect to show up the way that they should for them in order for them to receive that level of discipline and maybe that level of success that you have today. And so I want to believe that mentorship would have also played a part in where you're at today. Tell us a little bit about the mentorship and the mentors who would have aided in who Camille Gorakh is.
All right, like I mentioned, my parents, they didn't have, the highest level of education, but they had the basic understanding. So they knew at that time, that taking care of the children and their well-being and their education was of paramount importance. And I would say the same thing to my parents. It's basic understanding. This is what we need. We just needed to advocate for your children. We just needed to show up for them. Now, apart from that, you talk about mentorship. Yes, a business coach is very important, but I believe my first mentor has always been my parents as well. I watched how my father thrive as a businessman from where he started to where he is today. And my mom, as well, as a homemaker, the way she took care of her family with this discipline and this humility, and she was so contented. So for me, those are some basic life values that would have contributed to who I am today. But apart from that, putting me as an individual and the values that I would have brought up with the business side of it, I took on a business coach in 2019. So this is the action coach, business coaching in Guyana. So from 2019 to 2025, it's about 6 years in business coaching and mentorship. But I also do a lot of networking, a lot of reading, and I show up for all of the different opportunities that they're going to have for webinars, seminars, because for me, learning never stops.
Never stops.
Every time you're in the right space, is an opportunity to learn something new and to see things from a different perspective.
So, Dr. Gorakh, you started in your father's garage, and here you are 30 years later?
Almost 30.
With 4 campuses across Guyana. I know that didn't come without its fight, without its challenges. You have to fail forward at times. You've had to learn from your mistakes, but tell us a little bit about that journey and overcoming them.
There have been many challenges in my life. There have been some medical setbacks. The most important thing, I must give credit to my support system. My husband has always been there supporting me, and we all know in 2020, the pandemic.
Yeah.
So at that time, we knew the tourism sector and education would have been hit the most. We would have been affected the most. And again, through coaching and mentorship, you talk about fail forward. And at that time, there were so many adverse. There were so many challenges, but it was not downtime. When it was downtime for so many people, for me, we start preparing. It was preparation for us. So rather than sitting back and waiting for things to happen, mind you, while the pandemic was a challenge for so many people, we were in preparation mode. And it was through the pandemic where we actually evolved the whole education system at CAI. We start studying different things, different approaches, different methodologies, and we start moving away from the traditional setting. It was during the pandemic, within 1 to 2 years, we actually expanded to 2 more campuses. So it was during that time, even during challenges, we saw a lot of opportunities and we tap into them. But that comes with a high level of resilience.
Yeah.
Once you have a strong mental stamina, and you were brought up and built differently, I believe it comes with, it is an innate quality you must have. I'm not a person who gives up or quit that easily. So even though we may have had many challenges in my 25, 30 years, I always look at these challenges as opportunities to see what can come out of it. So even major challenges, I would have had the opportunity to see where my strength really lies. I would have had the opportunity also to see the true colors of people. In a sense that when you thought that they were for you, when it got really tough, they left and they went into different directions, and that spoke about loyalty as well. So even in all of the challenges, there were great opportunities as well. You just have to be smart to look at it from a critical eye and see it as opportunities for growth as well.
Looking for opportunities within the challenges. I love that. I know as women, female entrepreneurs, one of the conversations that is ongoing is access to finance for women entrepreneurs. How has your experience been in that regard?
Another interesting question. I have been part of many events and networking, opportunities where I'm posed with that question. And I would tell myself that I have to be very lucky in a sense because I've never really gotten any major challenge. Obviously, the bank will only lend you, give you access to what you can qualify for, and that will be measured through your collateral, through your security. When I first started my business, it's very, very important to have basic skill in financial literacy. So that is something that is an area I often, dive deep into to understand and to know my numbers. Knowing your numbers are very, very important because a wise man once said, you really cannot manage what you don't measure. So if you don't know your numbers, how will you know where your financial strength or your weaknesses are? So it's important to practice good financial prudence. You have to be financially responsible, financially literate, and yes, once you can afford it, you have yourself a good accountant or an auditor, because when you're in the business as a CEO, it is hard to be focused. Even though you pay attention to the numbers, your entire job cannot be consumed by managing the numbers. It is important you have the expertise for that. And once you have a solid business plan, you're very disciplined with your finance, and you try to keep your account not in the red, the bank will be there to support you. I have had banks that have always been loyal to me, and again, it comes with good financial responsibility.
I love that, and I think our listeners and our viewers will absolutely appreciate that piece of advice. Coincidentally, I was with a friend earlier and she asked me a question. She was, how is it being a boy mom? And it is a question that I had to think long and deep about, because I'm a mom to one little boy. So it was a bit challenging to sort of measure how that is. I think I'm trying to figure out how to be a mom. The gender, I don't know. I can't really compare it to anything, but one of the things that I lamented on in my response is that just being a mom in general, I think it hasn't been as challenging as I've heard many persons attest to it being, because of support, of having the community, of having my husband, of having my mom and my family there whenever I have to be away to do work like this. And so you are a mom to 4 incredible boys. I can just imagine the energy that's in the room, in the house.
Yes.
But how have you been able to balance being a mom, being an entrepreneur, being a teacher, being an educator, and still make time for Camille?
Yes. Okay. All right. So you mentioned having one boy is a challenge. Just think of me of having 4.
I don't want to think about it.
And my eldest is going to be 22. Born 2003, yes, he's going to be 22. And my second is going to be 20. My third is just going to be 18. And I have my baby boy is just about 11. He's going to be right in common entrance. Yes, when I think about him, my heart lights up, because I look forward to going home to him. The older boys are a bit reserved. You're not going to get a hug and a kisses like before. But I look forward to his cuddle. It makes my day just okay.
And you're embracing it until hoping he doesn't get as reserved as the others.
But all the 3 boys are okay, because I enjoy in the evenings. We go home, they still come, they sit with you on the sofa. Last night, one of them just rest their head on my lap, and it felt really, really good to know, as much as they're maturing, they're not ashamed or shy away. Because I see this happen to colleagues where the friends now have the influence over their children or their boys, and mommy and daddy is no longer primary importance. But coming back to the challenge, I'm thinking, what has been the challenge raising my 4 boys? Apart from boys being boys, I think they came in this world, they all came with their own purpose. But it just got my brain's going all the time. It never sleeps, except when I'm actually sleeping. All 4 of them, they're really good, they're disciplined, they're humble. I tried my best to set really good standards. They're all product of Camille's Academy. I've never made them feel that, the pressure's extra on them. I just wanted them to enjoy their boyhood, the childhood, the teenage year in school. But growing them up When having accomplished everything that I would have, it takes a good support system. Apart from the grandparents, apart from the dad doing his part, I've never one day, detour my teacher or my HM or even the admin staff from disciplining my boys. I said, I'm hardly ever here. If they're here, they're out of line, I give you that authority to do that. I remember a couple of years back, one of my HM, she said, Miss Camille, I had to discipline Ranveer. She said, I hope you don't feel bad. I said, I spoke with him once. He should be here by 8 o'clock, common entrance class. Day 2, he's still not here by 8:15. So day 3, I pulled him in. I gave him a good scolding. Is it okay? I said, no. I said, that's okay. I would have never, once I know you don't, harass my child or disrespect him or embarrass him in any way, I give you all the full authority to discipline my children. Help me in raising them. And that is where support system comes in.
It takes a village.
A village to raise a child, the famous African, saying. So as parents, we need to exercise that level of openness. We shouldn't hold, grudge or have animosity if the neighbor or the village try to discipline our children. So these are the things that we have to do, especially as a career woman and having 4 boys. We need to have a support system.
I love that. I want to go back a bit to just Camille's Academy. I want to go back to Dr. Camille, because we spoke about the challenges, we spoke about where you started, and I believe that over the years you continue to reap the rewards of the seeds that you have planted. I opened with you're being an award-winning educator. Just recently you received a global award at the World School Summit. Camille's Academy received that award, but you were also recognized at the World School Summit in Malaysia, where you were awarded an honorary doctorate from Maryland State University. Yes. Let's talk about that and what it means to you, especially considering all of the work and the sacrifices you've made over the last 2+ decades.
I think it's still sinking in. Because coming back from the World School Summit was another learning opportunity, many opportunities, a lot of networks, a lot of collaborations happened there. But coming back for me, yes, there's now a title to your name, but much have not really changed, because I grew up very humble, and this is what I want. Yes, I've earned a title, because while persons may be studying for a PhD, and there's still a debate on this, while persons may now be studying through a PhD and how to do it, through all of the research and the evidence out there, 25 to 30 years we've already been doing it, and here is the result, or here are the results. So having been conferred with an honorary doctorate, it felt really good, because you're actually getting the recognition for the work you have been doing. People would see things on the outside, but don't know what happens behind the scenes. All the sacrifices, the challenges. So it felt really good, mind you. It felt really, really good. Like I said, I'm still enjoying it. It's still sinking into a sense.
And I think that is important, because it's so often that we achieve so much in life, but we don't take the moment to bask in that. Some of us, we're chasing after the next big thing, so I love that you are taking time to enjoy that and to have it marinate and to say, yes, I deserve it. Because sometimes I think we are afraid to say that, yes, I deserve this. I put in the work. I worked hard for this. And so congratulations for the awards that you have received. We're preparing to wind down. As we spoke about just now, balance as a mom, but as a woman in business, what advice would you give to any woman any young girl, any young person who is looking at this podcast and they're wondering if they too can make it, if they too can go after their dreams, and they need some sort of push to fuel them and to fuel their ambition? Just look into the camera and talk to them for me.
I think it's important, and it is a value I've always instilled in my students, not just my own children. It's very, very important to be disciplined, to have a disciplined mindset. In terms of not just being disciplined, let's always continue to remain very humble, true to yourself, continue to be your authentic self. I'm so happy that this interview is not scripted. I just wanted to be my authentic self. And it is something that every young girl and every boy out there, you don't have to be like someone you see on social media. You just be you. Give it your best shot. Education is important, but it's also important to take like a balanced approach to learning. For me, my famous tagline is, at Camille's Academy, it's where learning begins, but the fun never ends, because you want your childhood days to be the most memorable. School days should be the best days of your life. And also, life have phases. Try not to jump the stages of life. Enjoy being a young boy or girl. Enjoy your childhood as you transition into adolescence, into a teenager. That comes with a greater sense of responsibility and more accountability as well. It's important that you be respectful in every sense, but most importantly, self-respect. All right, so those are my basic advice. They're values that we talk about every single day, but it's important that we practice them, and you must always believe that there is, a supreme being, there is a God, and I'm highly spiritual, and I believe in that. Every day I wake up with a sense of purpose, and that is what we want. You must be happy, you must feel fulfilled, you must have a sense of purpose. This life is so beautiful, but we're in control of all of the decisions and the things, that continues to make it, more beautiful. So that's basically some simple but real life examples.
Dr. Camille, thank you so much. I believe that there's so much that we can take away from this interview. And I want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here. We truly appreciate it. And I wish you all the best as you continue to mold our nation's children. And maybe one day my little boy might be a product of Camille's Academy.
It's a pleasure.
I wish you all the best, and thank you for your service to Guyana. Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it there from our guest, Dr. Camille Deokie-Gorakh, an educator. As I said, there's so much that you can take away from this episode, and if there's something that resonated with you, feel free to share that. Click the share button, use the hashtag FuelHer Energy Podcast. Give your comments within the comment section, and let's have a chat. Be part of the community. Let's build this community together. So my name is Jimmy C. McCallum, saying thank you for joining us in this episode of the FuelHer Energy Podcast. And we're going to be back next week, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Multiple FPSOs, drill ships, and support vessels. And this is just the beginning. Life offshore has become a reality for many Guyanese in the oil and gas industry, but in the past, we had to travel abroad to complete the necessary offshore survival training. Now, the training is available right here in Georgetown. I'm getting the skills I need and building the career I've always wanted. I'm Max, and this is what's possible.
Learn more about Max's story and how ExxonMobil's investments are benefiting thousands of Guyanese like him at www.exxonmobil.com/what is possible.